It's an issue which is invisible but in plain sight. And if we don't equip our kids with the tools to talk about it, to tell them how to fight back, to give them inspiration, we will always have this issue in our midst. So we have to fight back.
That's Ruchira Gupta, and I'm Dan Skinner. This is Conversations. Ruchira Gupta is a writer, feminist campaigner, professor at New York University, an Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist, and founder of the anti-sex trafficking organization Opni-Op Women Worldwide. She's helped more than 20,000 girls and women in India exit prostitution systems. She's also written manuals on human trafficking for the UN Office for Drugs and Crime. Ruchira divides her time between Delhi and New York, and she joins us to talk about her novel, I Kick and I Fly, which deals with the topic of human trafficking. Ruchira, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dan. I'm so pleased to be talking to the good folk of Kansas.
Before we talk specifically about the novel, talk with us about the problem of human trafficking and how widespread this problem is around the globe.
Human trafficking is the second largest crime, organized crime in the world, according to the United Nations. And according to the numbers, at any given moment, there are more than 25 million people trapped as victims of sex trafficking, of which, the majority are women and children, more than 70%. And the ages of those who are trafficked are normally between 9 and 13-year-olds. So think of all the little girls out there who are put into these situations, millions and millions of them. And every year, even inside the United States, the numbers vary, but it's between like 100,000 to 300,000 trafficked people. And many of them are not from outside the country, they are from inside the country.
I imagine that part of the problem with dealing with human trafficking is that for many of us, it's invisible.
Exactly. It's a crime which is in plain sight but invisible. One is because we don't want to look at something which is so truly awful. It pains us to see the pain of the little girls and the young women standing at street corners, their faces painted, shivering in the cold. And we know that their smiles are fake. And we can do nothing about it, is what we think as we drive past. So we choose to ignore it because it's easier. And yet, it's all around us, in hotel rooms, in massage parlors, on street corners, even in Kansas, as you know. There are task forces set up in your city and your state to take this challenge on. And, the issue is about, of course, homelessness and poverty and food insecurity, but it's also about body shaming and about bullying and about men who want to prey on the most vulnerable girls who feel that they lack shelter, or they lack love, and they are picked up by these men who say, oh, I'll give you a better life. I'll give you a job which will give you some money to pay your way through college, or I will just give you a roof over your head. And once the girls are in, then it's very, very hard to come back. And even our foster care system sometimes becomes a pipeline for girls to be trafficked, and our prison system. Also, there is a pipeline from sexual abuse at home to trafficking. And all these are issues which exist right here in our midst and can be prevented.
Well, I want to talk with you more about the work that you're doing to help girls get out of these situations in just a bit. But let's talk about the novel. How did your work with human trafficking lead to writing this novel?
So I Kick and I Fly is my novel, which is published by Scholastic, and it's about a young girl called Hira, who's 14 years old, from a nomadic tribe, and she escapes prostitution by becoming a kung fu champ. Now, how does that happen? She's bullied in school, she's kicked out, she's hungry, she knows that her next meal is now in danger because school was the source of food when a woman's right advocate enrolls her in Kung Fu. And through the practice of Kung Fu, she learns the power of her body and begins to fight for it. And slowly, the community, her mother, her family stand by her, and they all take on organized crime together. Now, this you would think is a social justice adventure. Can it really happen? Can a little girl stand up to organized crime? And I will tell you, yes, it's based on truth. And the girl Hira in my novel is really a real girl in my NGO Apne Aap. I began writing I Kick and I Fly when a girl just like Hira won a gold medal in karate in my NGO. So I wanted to share this story with other young people who are facing body shaming and bullying and are being preyed upon by traffickers or other sexual predators, that you can stand up to injustice and win. Human trafficking may seem like a big crime, but you know, there is a girl who fought back and many girls who fought back and won in real life. So, I want to share this story of truth and hope because it can save our lives. Along with the book, we have created a reader's guide with Scholastic, which parents and teachers can use to talk to young kids about uncomfortable issues, which are all around them, but no one talks to them about. As you said, Dan, it's an issue which is invisible but in plain sight. And if we don't equip our kids with the tools to talk about it, to tell them how to fight back, to give them inspiration, we will always have this issue in our midst. So we have to fight back.
And as you pointed out, this is a difficult issue, and frequently people sort of want to ignore it. By using fiction to tell this story, is that a way for you then to bring this issue to young people in a way that's going to engage them that perhaps just hearing the facts would not?
Exactly. I wrote I Kick and I Fly, so as a social justice adventure. It's a very fast paced page turner. In every chapter, Hira, my protagonist, is a fighter. She loses control of herself and then wins somehow, gains control over her body or her life inch by inch. And the community gets together to take on organized crime. So there's kidnapping, there is a breakdown of family relationships and coming together of families. There's love, there's hate, there are friendships, there are feuds, and all of it is interesting. It's not told in a boring way, and each anecdote is picked from real life, from the different heroes that I met. And I Kick and I Fly is interesting, but it's also true. And that's why I think young people will connect to it, because very often we hide the truth from them. I'm not hiding the truth, but I'm just telling it in a interesting and inspiring way so that people can connect, because there's nothing like great literature to get under the skin.
So, for what age group is this book intended?
I Kick and I Fly is for anyone from age 12 and up. So it could be a 13-year-old, it could be a 19-year-old, it could be a 50-year-old. It's an interesting story, and I've told it in a very visual way. So I describe the texture and the scene, and the background is, of course, organized crime. But the foreground is a girl who's fierce and spunky and fighting back and winning, as she makes allies and discovers her power. So I think, there are clues. Gloria Steinem says it could save lives. And I really do think it could save lives. I really believe that because it's worked. It's worked in real life. So the story is also going to work as I pass on the baton with I Kick and I Fly to every young person out there who will read the book, because they will join the movement. I've created resources, calls to action. I am an activist against sex trafficking, and I have set up an NGO to make sure that I help girl by girl prevent their trafficking from ever happening to them. Also, I work law by law. I took my documentary, The Selling of Innocence, which is how I became an activist, to the UN and to the US Senate to create the first Trafficking Victim Protection Act and the UN Protocol to End Trafficking. And, it was a bipartisan bill which became an act. So there was a senator from Kansas called Brownback, and there was a Democrat senator called Wellstone. And they both came together to help me get this law passed. So we can do it together. We can overcome differences and just do this good thing together to create a world in which no child is bought or sold. I wanted to take it beyond my NGO because there are only so many girls I can help out there. Now, with I Kick and I Fly, I can take this book and the story to every school and every library and the thousands of young kids in America out there who will learn something, save themselves, save their friends, and save the world in the process.
The novel is I Kick and I Fly by Ruchira Gupta. And Ruchira, I'd like you to tell us more about your organization, Apne Aap Women Worldwide, and the work that the organization does.
So my NGO Apne Aap means literally self-action in Hindi, and we have the words women worldwide connected to it, as you can see in the name. And that is about how women are coming together in local communities in Forbesganj in India, where I've set up a community center with a community classroom and a legal desk, livelihood trainings, sewing classes, and other things, so that all of us can come together to take on human trafficking, form friendships. My NGO gets daughters of prostituted women into schools, and through the power of education, we prevent human trafficking. We also organize women in small circles of 10 so that they have each other and they can watch each other's back as they take on traffickers or even the local food supplier who will say, I won't give you food at a low cost rate just because you're poor or you're from a marginalized community. You could be from an indigenous community or you're a prostitute. That's what they tell them. So we help them get that food. We help connect them to livelihoods and bank accounts, and we give them the support to fight back the traffickers in court, testify in court, put traffickers in jail. And eventually, all these groups of 10 federate together and we march on the streets to change laws. And we've had success in that. We marched on the streets for the human trafficking law in India, and today that is the law, Section 370 Indian Penal Code. In the United States, it's the Trafficking Victim Protection Act. In the UN, it's the UN Protocol to End Trafficking. And through my NGO, Apne Aap, I've helped thousands of girls who are now college graduates and have jobs and have exited out, helped their mothers exit out of prostitution. And we still continue. We have kung fu and karate classes in our community center in Forbesganj. The red light area that we began working in, thanks to our efforts over a period of 20 years now, has only 2 brothels left. There were 72 brothels when I began work. And in communities where there was intergenerational prostitution, prostitution that was passed down from mother to daughter, we now don't have it anymore. In the first time in 150 years, the girls are now doctors and lawyers. One is even a police officer. One is a chef, managers in Domino's pizza parlors, animation artists. They have choices. And prostitution is really an absence of choice. What we are doing through education and empowerment is increasing choices for the most marginalized girls and women.
If people would like to learn more about your organization, is there a website they can go to?
Yes, they can go to 3 websites. One is my own website, ruchiragupta.com. They can go to the website of the book, ikickandifly.com, where there are resources for readers and students and a community that we are building. And they can go to the website of my NGO, apneaap.org, A for Apple, P for Peter, N for Nancy, E for England, and then again, 2 A's, applepeter.org, apneaap.org. So there are 3 ways that you can learn, support, volunteer, donate, sign petitions to the Congress to tell them that they must equip schools with books like mine, like I Kick and I Fly, to make sure that kids have the tools they need to fight human trafficking.
And again, this novel is I Kick and I Fly by Ruchira Gupta. Ruchira, thank you very much for talking with me today.
Thanks, Dan, and I hope this conversation will be very, very useful for all the people in Kansas who are listening in.
If you would like to hear more interviews on a wide variety of topics, both fiction and nonfiction, you'll find them at kansaspublicradio.org/conversations. And you'll also find us on Facebook. Conversations is a production of Kansas Public Radio. I'm Dan Skinner. Thanks for listening.